This is the My Campaign Coach podcast, where we talk about how to win elections. Every week, we let you hear straight from the best consultants, operatives, and candidates in the game, all for one reason, to help you win. For more information about how we can help you win, visit mycampaigncoach.com. Now, here's your host, Raj Schaefer.
Welcome to the My Campaign Coach podcast. This week we're talking to one of my very favorite people and one of the hardest working conservative activists I've ever met, Toby Marie Walker. We're going to talk to Toby about how she got started in politics, the craziness of living through the past 7 years as a Tea Party leader, and find out what her biggest pieces of advice are for first-time candidates from the perspective of a grassroots leader and volunteer. Toby first came through one of my training programs back in 2009, and we've been close friends ever since. I got to watch her be transformed from a political junkie to an activist and become a true force within the Tea Party movement since its inception. She's been nationally recognized for her work on a number of conservative organizations and served on numerous leadership councils, policy advisory committees, and kitchen cabinets for elected officials of all types of office. Since 2012, Toby's been instrumental in fighting the illegal targeting of conservative organizations by the IRS. Her efforts led to one of the largest lawsuits ever filed against the IRS, DOJ, and Department of Treasury. And during that time, she's helped countless organizations in that fight and actively worked with Congress to enact policy reforms and uncover the truth behind that targeting. I've been constantly inspired by Toby's tenacity and willingness to fight for what she believes in, even when it came at a significant personal cost. She's a good friend, amazing woman, and persistent troublemaker for the left. Senator Cruz and I affectionately know her as Tia Loca, but to most everyone else, she's Toby Marie. Toby, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. You make me sound pretty good.
Well, given what you've been up to for the last 7 years, it's not hard to make you sound like you know what you're doing and like you've done a thing or two.
Well, I haven't always known what I was doing, trial and error, and lots of phone calls to you, thank goodness, and other mentors in the political world. But that's why I think it's important to do these podcasts, is because people who are just getting started, or maybe they've been in it for a while, but they've forgotten, what it's like to be new.
Yeah.
And so I really hope that people will appreciate we do all these things to help them win.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's one of the things I think really comes across. I hope folks will hear in the conversation today is, when people look you up online or see you or hear from you through whatever medium, interviews and all these different things you're doing today, it's easy to think about you just kind of always having done that. But the truth of the matter is, 7 years ago, you were just a lady that was ticked off at what was going on in D.C. and in closer to home in Austin and wanted to do something about it. And that's one of the things that stood out about you from day one is you weren't just interested in waving a sign at a rally. You were focused on actually getting things done. So give me a little bit more background before we go into kind of how you got here. Talk more about what you've been up to in the last couple months since the Cruz presidential campaign ended. Because you're back to focused on a lot of more local issues now, right?
One is the IRS, which is always, in my life.
Sadly.
They just love me. It's more gearing up for the next session in Texas is what is my primary goal, is to make sure that we have some criminal reform, because we have way too many people in prisons that really overcrowding, and it's costing us a lot as taxpayers that really could be doing other kinds of punishment services, whatever you want to call it. And then closed primaries in Texas is a hot topic.
Those would have been nice.
Well, it would have been nice. And so now we have to look, where do we go from here after this election cycle? So there's some other things that I'm kind of keeping my eye on. But my husband, I have told him that I would pick something and do that. Pick a cause. Instead of being a jack of all trades kind of thing, helping everybody. So I'm trying to kind of narrow it down and focus in on finding what is most important to me right now. And with that, it's usually First Amendment. It's being able to say what you want to say when you want to say it, and yes, be accountable for it, but nobody stopping you from doing it.
Well, that definitely has, with the IRS targeting and the lawsuit you guys have been working through there. That's obviously tied in very closely there. It's become something that you've had to care about in a real way because it's been an actual threat. And most people don't think about their First Amendment rights being threatened, but especially in your case, it's not just been they were threatened by somebody. This is quite literally the federal government threatening your First Amendment rights.
Yeah, and not just mine, but lots of people. And if you're a conservative on the right and you got involved, you were a target. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't anything that you did wrong. It was what you were doing right. And that's the sad part, is that if you're on a certain end of the spectrum for political speech, you don't get targeted like you do these days on the conservative end from both sides, because don't forget, fire and cook in the Texas ledge. So this happens on a state and a federal level, and we have to push back and fight back and keep those rights active, because if you don't use them, you lose them. And so we've got to use them, and we've got to get people really involved in understanding that, one bad bill, we are one bad bill away from nonprofits being able to speak or invite whoever they want to hear from. They can't even listen. And that's the part that is more frightening to me, is it's not just our speech, it's restricting what I can hear.
Yeah, that was one of the scariest things to me when we were, this has been an ongoing thing for years that you guys, for over 4 years that you guys have to deal with. And as I was observing that and kind of go alongside of you guys during those first couple months, though, as it was kind of coming about, and we were saying, what the heck's going on here? I mean, they were wanting everything. They wanted your minutes from meetings. They wanted lists of who came and spoke. They wanted recordings. And that was before it became, obvious to most people out there how big of an issue it was.
Oh, when it first started, people did not believe us. They thought we'd done something wrong, even on our side. I mean, I had people on our side tell me, oh, you did something wrong. No, I didn't.
Well, that's important. I really appreciate the work you've done to not only, fight back, but also to help others, because you've been a huge asset to these other groups out there that have faced the same targeting, and helping them understand what they can do about it. And it's one of those things, sadly, you've been a trailblazer on, because I wish you hadn't been in those crosshairs. But as a result of it, you've been a great asset to a lot of people out there, and thank you for that. So let's back up a little bit. So 7 years ago, which I can't believe it's been that long, walk me through kind of the who, what, where, when, and why of how you got started in politics.
Well, it was actually more like 9 years ago when the whole housing market started to go, and TARP and, the bailouts and everything. It affected me personally. So I was literally sitting in my living room, screaming at the TV and crying, and my husband walked through and said, stop crying about it and do something. So I started getting involved more of online activism. And I've always called my elected officials. I've always been one of those people. But I stepped it up. And then when the Tea Party, or the 9/12 started, I got involved with that, and then the Tea Parties, and we merged all of it here in Waco, and we were one of the first 50 cities that had a Tea Party. We formed on February 29th of 2009, and I did not want to be the head of it. I said, I will help you. I had some communications work and some media work from business, but I'll help you with this, but you got to find somebody else to lead it, because it's just not me. So here we are in 2016, and I had a very nice woman call me last week about what we're doing in the Tea Parties and stuff, and told her kind of on a hiatus until January, holidays and that kind of thing. I said, but if you look like, you and your husband, you're young and you want to, we'll be glad. Go ahead. To hand a lot of this over to you, but, it also comes with this other stuff. And she's like, but who would want to do that? And so this is why our board is still there. It's because of the IRS.
Right.
Nobody wants it now. So that's how I got started, I was so upset over the fiscal irresponsibility from both sides of the aisle that I just couldn't take anymore. I said, this is what we're going to hand to our children and our grandchildren, this enslavement to debt on a local, state, and federal level that they can never pay off. We're putting them in debt. And I think people have forgotten about that in 2016. We're enslaving our children to future debt that we spent. We're going to make them pay for.
What keeps you motivated? What is it? What's the thing that keeps you engaged and just from riding off into the sunset and saying, screw this?
With me, it's a little bit of guilt at what we're doing to the kids, the grandkids, and future generations. And then it's also, I like to see things through. Rick Perry, when I very first started this, Governor Perry, I met him at a meet and greet in Waco, and I was getting knocked around a lot in 2009 by Republicans. They really didn't know what to make of us. And he asked me, so how are they treating you? And I put my head down and kind of shook my head. And I don't think they like me much. And we were shaking hands goodbye, and he pulled me back towards him. You know, he's so animated. And he pulls me back towards him, and he starts shaking his finger in my face a little bit, saying, Toby Marie, don't give up, don't give in, keep going. I'm like, okay, you know, and you hear all these pep talks all the time. And he kind of, you know, and he squeezed my hand a little harder, and he said, promise me you will not give up. So every now and then, when I really want to just walk away, I remember that promise. I promised I would not give up, but finish what I started. And so that's why I'm still doing things. I mean, not to the extent I was, but I will probably always be active because you can't give up. The only way to get through hell is to keep walking. If you stop, it consumes you. So we all have to keep walking. We all have to keep going. We all have to keep trying. And I think my biggest frustration is seeing people, which I call a keyboard warrior. Not that we don't need them. We do. God bless them. But you have to do more than that. You actually have to take your passion and move it into action. You have to get off the street with the sign and start going to meetings and start talking to elected officials. And, you know, I'm not that influential. I mean, people think I am. I'm really not. They're just scared of me. because I'm going to go say something to them and tell all my friends what I think, and then get them to say something. So it's not that I'm, you know, influencing politics. I'm really not. I'm influencing people to influence politics. My one voice doesn't mean anything. It's when I can get 40, 50 people to go to a meeting, or I can get a few thousand people to call Senator Cruz's office, or whatever it is. And they don't, you know, that's what your street creds are in politics, is how many people can you influence to act. So I like to cultivate a lot of people who feel like I do, if they just don't know how to do it. Kind of like you taught us, you know, it passes on. Now we're teaching other people.
So moving on to talking about campaigns that you've been instrumental in, what do you look for in a candidate who you're considering to support? You have a lot of folks that want to come to you and get you on their team, or get Toby's support. But what do you look for when you're deciding who to support and which opportunities to let pass?
Well, there's like the tangible things. I want someone who knows what they're talking about. If you're going to run for example, for railroad commissioner, you should know what that is. You should know what the job is. If you want to run for county commissioner, well, do you know what they do? Well, you know, I don't know, but I always wanted to get in politics, and county commissioner seems easy to win. But do you know what they do? No, but I can learn. Okay, so you're just wanting a career. You're not wanting a job. The job. You just want your name in lights. So that's one of the things I look for. How knowledgeable are they of the job they're applying for? Because that's what they are. They're candidates applying for a job that we're all hiring. And then I look at background. To me, character still matters. Some people it doesn't. To me, it does. You know, we're not all perfect. I don't expect to have, you know, poster children up there, but your choir boys. But I do expect them to have a certain amount of some character there, that we can count on what they say to us is going to be accurate. Then I just look at, do they have the means to run? Can they raise money? Can they do the work it takes to raise the money? Because you can be the best speaker in the world, but if you can't ask for money and close the sale, because that's what it is, if they can't close, then I'm wasting my time. Because if they don't have any money, they can't buy airtime. If they don't have any money, they can't pay staff. If they don't have any money, they can't travel. So you have to have money in politics. You just do. That's life. And then the third part, it's just gut. Sometimes you meet somebody and you just know. You can take one look at them, hear them once, and know that person is going to go somewhere. And it's just that gut feeling. Now, I don't recommend going with your gut 100%, but take that into consideration. If you don't hear them speak and think, wow, then why are you going to help them?
So we've talked about what you look for. What is it that are some of your biggest pet peeves when it comes to candidates you've supported in the past? The ones you look back on and be like, man, that just drives me nuts.
The I. Me, my. No, we, us, our. It's basic rule of thumb in business, basic rule of thumb in life. You know, if they're self-centered and it becomes all about them and what's going to further their career versus who they're serving, that's my pet peeve. It's like, well, you forgot who brought you to this dance. That is my biggest pet peeve and the biggest reason I'll go find somebody to run against them. Not that I do that, but I might encourage somebody. But that's a pet peeve. And then also, do they keep their grassroots feel in their contacts and their, you know, are they appreciative? Do they stay humble? Do they understand that, you know, they're serving a better, you know, a greater good? This is kind of like being a preacher or in the military. Or you're serving, and do they still have that servant part? And people will tell me, well, you know, what does that matter? Well, if you don't have the servant part, well, they're self-serving, and that doesn't help us. So we really need to look at their actions and their words after they're in office and say, did they keep their promises? Did they, you know, remember, you know, the people who helped them so that they continue to help them? And just, you know, their character. And sometimes it changes when they get in office. You and I both know them. Absolutely. They get into office and they change. And, you know, I warn candidates now, when you're elected, before election night's over, you will be co-opted by someone. It will either be your grassroots supporters, who will always have your ear first and foremost. It'll be the consultant class, it'll be the donor class, or it'll be the ruling class. But somebody's co-opting you because you're not there all by yourself. You better be prepared for that. And the ones that tell me, nope, I will never be co-opted, it's naive. They're not prepared for office. Because they will be.
And what we've seen so many times, and I laugh about this I was talking to somebody the other day about, they're asking me, you know, about the fundraising side of how much money to raise for the primary and the general, and it's in a safe seat. So he's like, so is this amount for the entire campaign or just the primary? And I was like, well, that's just for the primary. And he said, well, why don't we have a number in there for the general? I was like, well, frankly, you're not going to have a problem raising money for the general. Because once you get in there, it's a safe Republican seat, and you will be blown away by how many new friends you get right after the polls close and they find out you won. So what you have to be doing now is preparing yourself, making sure you have that ironclad set of principles and a good accountability structure around you that's able to keep you on that straight and narrow. You've provided a real service to a lot of people by being that grounding influence and helping make sure they have others around them.
I don't do it to be mean, but don't ask me a question if you don't want an answer. Because I'm not going to, most of the time. When I start, there's a couple of them that I no longer answer. And to me, that's when they should know they're in trouble. Because when I feel like I have to couch what I say and not say things because, oh, that'll hurt their feelings, or, oh, you know, that's when I start looking at them going, I think you chose the wrong career. So I'm blunt. I mean, if they ever ask me, I'll tell them. But I've learned sometimes you got to let them sleep in the beds they lie in, or beds they make. If you're invited to be on a kitchen cabinet, you should take that seriously because you are giving them advice. Don't pat it up with your opinions alone. Ask your friends, like, you know, hey, I'm going to meet with my county commissioner or my senator or my congressman, a state rep, my lieutenant governor, whoever it is. We have these calls, and what's important to you? You know, you're their ombudsman or constituent services. You're part of their team, and even though you're not official, you can help guide that and tell them, well, you know, I'm hearing a lot of people talk about, and on a federal level right now, of course, it's their Obamacare insurance rates. You know, they're skyrocketing. Well, you encourage them to tell their senators and their congressmen their story. Like, well, they know all this. But you know what? They don't. So they're not mind readers. You got to tell them. So it's important to have people that will, one, tell them the truth and not just kiss their butt and tell them what they want to hear, because that isn't helping anybody.
And they've got plenty of those once they get elected.
You know, that's not what you have me for or you for. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what I'm hearing. That's why you also need those kitchen cabinets, is to, you know, call that person that is in charge to say, hey, you really need to address this. This is going to be a hot issue. And it might be something right now that is minor, but it's going to grow because you see For example, TPP and TPA, 2 years before it became a hot topic in the media and in the grassroots, I was in Senator Cruz's office telling them, this is going to be a big deal in 2 years, and the ground is not going to like it, and here's why. And I explained it to them, and that wasn't received well at the time. And they didn't believe me. Did not believe me. This wasn't Senator Cruz himself. It was the staff. Later, they came back to me and like, okay, I made him tell me. I was right? Yeah, you were right. But, yeah, you've got to tell them, and you've got to warn them. And sometimes they're going to listen to you, and sometimes they're not. So you just have to, you have to do that. It's part of being, if you're asked, do it. And be honest. Be honest with them. Do not hold back. Be honest. Because if you're not going to be honest, you're useless. Even if you have to be mean and tell them the truth. That's what you have to do.
That's one of those things that people don't really take into account when they consider being on an advisory committee or kitchen cabinet, is that your primary role is to make sure that they don't get stuck inside of a bubble. Whether it's on the campaign and you're trying to assess how your message is playing or what you should do or how you could connect better with your people, or once you're in office and you're analyzing what are the important issues to my constituents and how can I better serve them, or should I take this money from this PAC, or should I work on this bill or partner up? You got to make sure that when you're in those roles that you're keeping them, keeping that bubble from forming around them, because it's far too easy, especially when you get geographically decentralized and over towards DC, for you to lose contact with those people and not listen to them as much. Because it's easy when you're in those situations and in those staff and in those briefings to be like, you know what, guys, those people down in Waco, they're great and they really did a lot to help us get elected, but they just aren't as smart as we are.
Well, see, I'll tell you, and this is how I kind of look at it a little slightly different. They are going to get in a bubble. When you elect them, you're putting them in a bubble. So the kitchen cabinet has access inside the bubble to say, hey, and if you want to be a cheerleader, don't sit on a kitchen cabinet. That's not your job. Your job is to tell them this and to challenge them and to have them explain it. And listen, if I have it wrong, it's not my fault I have it wrong. It's your fault because you have not communicated your message or your belief or your agenda or your goal or your legislative priority or whatever it is. You're not messaging it well if I don't get it.
My dad taught me growing up, communication is not what I say, it's what you hear. And ultimately, as the candidate, you have to, or the elected official, you have to take responsibility and top-level ownership of your message. It doesn't matter who the failing is. If it's not being communicated effectively, if your people on the ground don't understand what you believe and what you're doing for them, that's your fault. That's not our fault for not hearing you right. And that's why you have to work really hard as a candidate or elected official to make sure that that's being communicated. And your kitchen cabinet and having those grassroots level contacts, people that are willing to work hard for you and communicate the unvarnished truth to you, is absolutely essential.
Perception is reality in politics. The perception is the reality. It isn't factual sometimes, because the perception when the IRS case first started was that we had done something wrong. The reality was we were being targeted. But it took a year of us pounding a little over a year, of us pounding the pavement day and night and the airwaves and writing letters and getting people and explaining what was going on. It took us 15 months before Lois Lerner finally admitted what she'd done, because we had put so much pressure on and started, educating our congressmen and our senators and our fellow citizens and other people in the movement of this is what's going on and it can happen to you. And after that amount of time, they were like, oh, you were right. So don't give up. They might not see it in the beginning, but don't give up. And and even more importantly, if your perception changes, be willing to admit it and say, I was wrong about that.
So let's talk about one of the other things where you've had a great impact in campaigns, and that's when it comes to attracting, recruiting, training, and deploying volunteers. Talk us through how you believe campaigns should handle their volunteers. You've seen it done right and wrong enough times that I think you'll have some strong feelings to share with us.
Yeah, that is my favorite part of a campaign, dealing with the volunteers. To attract them, it's always kind of the star power that attracts people. But if you don't have a candidate that has that and we've all dealt with them. They don't have that star power. You have to build up what they're doing. And so you make a volunteer, you give them ownership, and you give them ownership of this portion of the campaign, and then you always acknowledge it, reward it, and encourage others to mimic it. So you're building your little grassroots army. And so when somebody comes in and they want to volunteer for just 5 hours a week, and that's all they can volunteer, that is 500% more than the average American. They don't volunteer at all. So even if it's only 5 hours versus somebody who's putting 40 hours in for you, that 5 hours is valuable, and you want them to feel valued. You want them to be recognized, get rewards, incentives, give them face time with the candidates first and foremost. The people who are putting in that time, they're as valuable as a donor. And people when candidates forget that, that's another warning kind of, oh crap. They don't understand that their grassroots people are as valuable as donors. You need both. One is not better than the other. You need both, and you should be talking to both with equal respect, and because they're giving you time. You can spend money and you can earn more money, but you can't earn more time. So if somebody is spending time on your campaign, it's more valuable than money, because you'd have to pay somebody to do that, or it wouldn't get done. So time and energy put into a campaign, to me, is so valuable. And the other part is, if they're willing to put that time and energy into this candidate, you don't want them working against you next time because you treated them poorly.
You're exactly right.
You need to cultivate those volunteers. They're not going to know what to do when they walk in if they've never worked on a campaign. Explain it. When I ran the Career Center here this time, we put out a little book that we put into, cellophane or whatever, and so everybody could read it. We handed it to them. This is how it works. This is what you can do. This is, where you can do it, here or at home or wherever, in your car or wherever. And here are all the different things that we need. Not everybody is going to be a phone banker. They're going to be, most people, this, most people is like, will you volunteer? Sure, what do you want me to do? Make calls. Oh, no, I'm not calling people.
It's one of the things I hate the most.
Well, I take it as a challenge, because I'm like, oh, okay, well, come in and do X, Y, Z. Maybe it's, I need ice. Will you do an ice run and a water run? And will you come in and make coffee and clean bathrooms? Sure. Then once they're there, I have been known to just hand them a phone and say, here, read this real quick. And they don't have a choice.
Just trick them into it.
Yeah, yes, I have done that. And, I have. And a mutual friend of ours that is in law enforcement told me he wasn't going to do phone calls, but his daughters were. Well, okay. So he came down and he was bringing supplies and that kind of thing and dropping the girls off. Well, one night I cornered him, and I'm like, okay, so you're telling me your 15-year-old can do this and you can't?
Yeah, you're okay with taking down drug dealers and getting shot at, but you're afraid of a phone call?
Yeah, so I kind of shamed him a little, I'll admit, and he got one of our better callers. He was awesome. His 9-year-old, 15-year-old, and his wife volunteered for different stuff. I mean, they were a great family. They'd come in for a few hours or sometimes all day. I mean, they were just an amazing family. And then we're still friends. And so, we had volunteers from 9 to 90. We were open. This is a different circumstance. You'll find this in federal elections, either Congress, Senate, President, where they have a call center. Go spend time in those call centers and power through those calls, because sometimes, you start off, it's not pleasant sometimes. I agree. It's not pleasant. People can be really rude. But you find those gems. And campaign managers are going to flip out what I'm about to say, but get off that dang on script.
Yeah.
Just after you ask us questions that you can answer, they're undecided. It's like, well, who you're leaning towards, what's important to you, and then have a conversation with them. But get off the script. Now, if you're making calls and they're just doing surveys because they want to know where they stand, stick to the script. But if you're towards the middle to end of the campaign cycle, you need to be flipping people. And this now becomes getting votes. So it's not quantity sometimes, that matters. It's the quality. Is it, well, I talked to 100 people today. How many are voting for our candidate? 80. Okay, well, how many did you talk today? Well, I only talked to 20, but all of them were undecided. Now they're in our camp.
Yeah, that's a hard balance to strike. A lot of campaign managers, they very much like sticking with the absolute script and looking at volume, mainly because those are the metrics that are easily reportable. Because you asked me, okay, how many calls did we make yesterday? And he's like, 500 is not as good as 1,000. That seems pretty clear. But to your point, when you're at the towards the end of a campaign and you're trying to persuade and turn out voters, it is absolutely critical that you're flipping those votes. And the best way to do that is having a candid conversation. And it's also, you can hire a call center to do survey stuff if that's what you need. Use your volunteers, the people with the highest level of passion, the ones that are willing to do the hard work for you, and use them to have a real conversation with voters. And at the beginning, you may have to keep them on a script to make sure that, one, they're comfortable, and two, they're not going to go too far off the reservation. But once they reach a level where you're comfortable and have some trust in them, turn them loose and let them have a little bit more open and candid conversation. They'll learn more from it. They're going to feel more rewarded as a result of it, and they're going to get you more votes.
Here in Waco, we've kind of always been known, we have call parties. And so we have incentives. I find incentives. I get people to donate stuff for prizes. We play call center bingo, where, somebody calls and, the most common things they say. We play bingo, and then people win stuff that way. And it's really good if the volunteers have actually met the candidate. So these are smaller races, local, state, sometimes federal, that they've actually met them and they believe in them, because that comes through on the phone. So if you're doing surveys and you're just trying to find out where you're at, that's one thing. But if you're trying to persuade people as we are towards the end of so it's in the primary, towards the end of the primary, you shouldn't be trying to figure out where you're at. You should be trying to persuade people to vote. And you always approach it as we're down, we're losing. You never approach it as we're winning. You always if you run if you're in last place, you have a better chance than if you run as if you're in first place. And we've seen that, here. So I treat it as it's an unpaid job, and the paycheck is getting the person that you want in office so that you don't have as much coming out of your paycheck in tax. That's how I justify all of this in my head. So, and if you're in and you think that making phone calls isn't important, let me tell you, you are the most valuable person I will meet in this campaign if you're going to come in and make phone calls. They are valuable people. But stick within the confines of the script. When I tell you go off script, don't start talking about conspiracy theories that you find on Alex Jones. Don't do that, because credibility is important. And don't start trashing something because you don't know if they might be that person. So if you get on the phone with someone and they mention, well, I'm not really looking for a pastor or a preacher to fill this position. I really just want somebody who knows what they're doing financially. And you start telling them why they're wrong, that is a boo-boo. Don't do that. You say, oh, okay. Well, so fiscal issues are important to you. Or vice versa. Well, I think if somebody is a good Christian, that they'll be really good fiscally. Don't tell them they're wrong. Okay, that's how they believe. Well, let me tell you why I believe our candidate fits that mold, and then you tell them. So you give them, and in sales, they'll tell you overcoming objections. So when you bring in your volunteers, whether they're block walking, phone banking, or working an event, they should have a list of common objections to that candidate and the answers to it, the right answers. So if somebody comes in and says, oh, well, I don't think so-and-so should be able to run because they're not they don't live in my county. They live in this other county. even though it's in the district. Yeah. And that sometimes geography, it comes down to geography. So what does the answer the candidate want? So that we're all consistent, we have the same message. So when I tell you to say, get off script, I mean, hi, are you voting for Ted Cruz today? Or are you voting for, Marco Rubio today? And they tell you, okay, thanks, bye, click. Well, you didn't do anything.
Right.
You got a number for some wonk up at the headquarters, but that's about it. And, most of the time, I've seen volunteers, and this is something I'll tell campaign managers that I don't think they know. They should, but most of them, there's very few campaign managers that I really like. I really like you. I really like JJ, but you know how I have a disdain for that occupation sometimes. And so volunteers lie when they phone bank. They will say, yep, you're voting for him when he's not, just to shut you up if you give too much criticism. If you're all about the numbers instead of the quantity versus the quality, they're going to start powering through, and when they get hang-ups, they're going to fib on them. They're going to fudge them. So it's important to be accurate. Volunteers, don't do that. Be accurate. And campaign managers, don't mistakenly encourage it by pushing to get to a number. Tell them to be accurate and do their best. And that you're appreciative if they made 10 calls or 100 calls.
Well, one of the ways that they can get away from that is by getting themselves out of their office, off their computer, and actually interfacing with the people that are doing the calling. Because if the only time where the volunteers see you as a campaign manager or field staffer is when you're putting the new numbers up on the board, or you're kicking them in the butt saying, hey guys, come on, we can meet our goal for today, then that's all they're going to care about, because it's what you it's what you measure that matters, not what you preach. And so if I say, hey Toby, it's really important that we convince that we turn a lot of new voters our direction today, but what I'm measuring is how many calls we get done today, which is an important function. If that's all that you see me measuring, that's all you're going to care about. And so what you have to do is get out of your office and go down there and listen to these people on the phone. Get on the phone yourself. Yeah. Talk to the folks and be like, hey, Toby, that was an awesome call. Tell me more about that. And so you said, well, they were undecided, but I talked to them a little bit. They really cared about the Second Amendment. I told them about what Ted has done to protect the Second Amendment, yada, yada. Man, great job, Toby. You're investing in them, you're encouraging them, but you're also letting them know that you care about more than just the numbers on the page. And that's going to be something that other folks around them are going to see. So make sure that when you're measuring things and when you're encouraging your volunteers, that you don't create this perverse incentive structure, because it can be absolutely catastrophic.
Yeah, and that's where you have to measure different things. You don't measure one thing. So when we had the call center, we measured how many calls the people made, and this is on the honor system, and how many people did you convert, or did you get them to commit? So if somebody said, I'm so excited, I got undecided, well, that gives them 5 points. And you know that they didn't do it if they made 100 calls in an hour.
Right.
But if they made 5 calls in an hour. And so there's different talents. Some people like to slam through those calls real quick. You get some of those people. You got to kind of get a mix of talent. And then you get the people who know the candidate. And this is the other thing you can do. For volunteers and for campaign managers or volunteer managers, you can have someone in that room, which we called, we had cruise captains. We had people who knew Ted's positions, policies, stances. They could probably give his speeches. They knew Ted Cruz. And we had 1 or 2 of those people there on site whenever we were open. So that if a brand new volunteer come in and was asked a question they couldn't answer, they go, I don't know, hold on. And they would raise their hand or flag it, whatever, and we'd come over running. And we'd take over the call, and then they'd move to a different phone, and they'd start over again. So that you're getting the quality and the quantity. So you can zip through, but if somebody on the other end, and you've been there, I've been there, you call a voter, and they're like, I'm not decided. What does so-and-so, what does, Mike Lee think about abortion? What does he think about, internet security? Or they'll ask you some obscure thing, well, you need to have somebody that can answer, or that can say, that's a good question that we don't know. Don't make it up. Don't make it up. Don't ever say a candidate does something that you don't know, because you can get them in trouble. You can tell them, well, if you'll give me your name, your phone number, and your email address, I will make sure one of our field staff calls you about this issue, because that is very important and a great question. Well, now that person thinks that they're important, because they are, and they feel important, and they feel like, oh, wow, I get 1,000 calls. You live in Iowa, you get 1,000 calls a day. But this person took time out to actually answer my questions and get answers for me. So you have to remember that you're a walking, talking billboard for that candidate. You have to, it's quality, yes, quantity, yes, but an accuracy. But you want to be able to get people, the ultimate goal is to get people to vote for the candidate. That's the goal. And so you don't want to lose sight of that. Don't lose sight of, if you're phone banking and somebody says, I'm undecided, and they start asking you questions, and you've got a campaign manager saying, well, you got to get to 500 calls, you turn around and tell that campaign manager, no, I need to get to 500 votes. And you tell them, until you'll sit here down here and you'll do it, because they probably haven't done it in years, if ever. So I think that's the other thing. You show your volunteers you're willing to, do whatever that you ask them to do, you have to be willing to do.
Well, and you make a really good point. This is a balance, right? You have to get through, you have to be able to contact a lot of voters, and you want to make sure there's a high contacts. And it's part of why being a volunteer coordinator or a field staff or a campaign manager can be a very tough job, because you're kind of the interface between two different parts of the campaign, and you have to create a balance while reporting upline and keeping satisfaction downline. So having been there many times, it's not an enviable position, but that's why your role matters so much. And to Toby's point about making sure that your volunteers see you working hard, I can't emphasize the importance of that enough. Earlier this year, I was up in my alma mater, Hirsdale College, and I was running a phone bank. And I had students coming in throughout the day. And I didn't call all the time, but especially when we had a lot of folks coming in there, or when we were very slow, I would get on the phone and I would start dialing. And it really made a difference as far as the engagement level. My favorite time to do it was if I started seeing students get a little bit chatty, or they weren't as focused, I'd get on there. I wouldn't criticize them. I mean, they were in there volunteering, getting paid very little to help. And so I wouldn't get on to them, but I'd get on the phone and I'd get up there at the front of the room and I'd just start cranking through these calls. And immediately the level of chatter and the distractions went way down, just from seeing that I was up there doing it with them. Yeah, I mean, I had great volunteers this go around. I mean, the best volunteers in the country, I had them. And I know people all over the country, but I'm telling you, I had the best. I had people that came in. Becky. Becky came in, was there sometimes 40 or 60 hours a week. I had two college girls, Brittany and Whitney. They would come in and spend 20 to 60 hours, depending on what they had going on at school. And so, when I tell people that we worked 60 and 80 hours a week, that was every week for almost 6 months. And before we got the phones, it was the phone from home, or it was talking, going to events, or always doing something. And it's the ABC, always be campaigning. When you go to, and you train your volunteers to do this, have volunteer training, because they don't know. When you get these first-timers in, they don't know. Why do we give out campaign buttons? Well, they think it's to wear to a rally or to a Republican lunch. Well, that's preaching to a choir. You wear that campaign button to the grocery store, and some people are going to look at you funny, and they're not going to like it. And you just smile and be pleasant. But other people are going to strike up conversations with you. So you always, in business, they always be closing. In politics, always be campaigning. So you wear that little pin, or you wear the T-shirt. People ask you questions. Like, look how many people around the state and now the country call me the cruise lady. And it's like, hey, I have a name. And I do stuff besides that. But, and it's the same thing with Congressman Flores here. My precinct goes heavy for him, because when I go to the Dollar General or the Family Dollar or the local restaurant or whatever, they know me.
and they'll ask me. And at one point, it got kind of funny because the people at the Family Dollar thought I was their congresswoman. I'm like, no. Oh, well, do you work for him? No. You don't work for him? No. But you do all this stuff. And I said, yeah, I just want to make sure that, you know what's going on. And that, oh, well, I was going to vote for you. That's why I wanted to know what your name was. I was like, I'm not on the ballot. What I did was I got Congressman Flores to come over during early voting, to come over and meet them. And he just popped in one day and surprised them. And he's like, I hear that you thought she was your representative. No, it's me. You voted for me because you voted straight ticket. And so, and then, so it made, so I saw a need here of, okay, yes, these are people who are working at Family Dollar, and, they are doing a job, and you wouldn't think to campaign to them. And I'm not, it's like, little things. It's like, what are you doing today? Oh, when people ask that, actually answer them. Oh, I'm getting ready to go down to Austin for a really great seminar on right on crime with Texas Public Policy Foundation. Really, what do they do? And then you tell them, and you don't take up too much time because people get mad in line, but but tell them. And when you find opportunities and ask them, it's like, well, what do you guys think about raising minimum wage? Ask them questions, and do that, and become that person in your precinct that people go to, or online that they go to. It's like, hey, Toby, a lot of people, what would I do if my grandpa passed away and he wants to be buried, we want to bury him in a national cemetery. How do we go about doing that? Well, I don't know. But I don't say I don't know. I say, oh, well, let me, contact, Senator Cruz or Congressman Flores, or if you want your state, let me look that up for you. Be that person that they can go to, this political social worker that they can call. Now, that comes with some pitfalls because wherever you go, people ask you political questions. I can't even go to the doctor without a 15-minute, whatever doctor I go to, not a lot of them right now, they ask me questions.
Same here.
And then they tell me, you should reduce your stress. And I'm thinking, then you should stop asking me about politics. And so, but be that, if you're going to do it, be that person they can come to and say, this is a problem, or even if there's a problem with them, so you aren't going to believe what Senator Cruz's office or Representative Flores's or, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick's office told me. Well, who told you that? And it's wrong. I said, well, yeah, that's wrong. Let's get you the right answer. Let's get you on the right path. Be that person, because that helps the constituent, it helps the voter, it helps your citizen, fellow citizen, and it also, with that elected official, they know that if there is an issue, that you're going to come to them and you're going to tell them about it. So, no matter what it is, you've got to kind of be that person and never guess. You find out. And if you're wrong, go back and tell them, hey, I was wrong. This is how you do it. So keep your credibility, and don't become a sycophant for a candidate. Don't do it, because they're not worth it. They're people too. They're not gods. They're not heroes. They're regular people, and they need to be told the truth, and they need to be told the truth very often. So, when people tell me, oh, well, you're really blunt with so-and-so, pick an elected official.
It could be any of them. You've done it to them all.
I can tell them what they want to hear, but it doesn't help anybody.
They get enough people that
I just kind of look at it. They pay people to do that. If they were paying me, then fine. If you only want to hear what you want to hear, fine. That's my job. But my job as a citizen is to hold them accountable. And if they don't like that and that makes them uncomfortable, well, then quit doing that bad behavior. Naughty. Bad. Roll up a newspaper, whack them on the nose. Not like literally, figuratively. I just mean, it's like, how you train a puppy? You have to train elected officials the same way, because they tend to crap on your floor a lot.
So what kind of advice would you give yourself if you were going back 9 years ago with all your current knowledge? What would you tell yourself about, as you're starting this political journey?
My first instinct is run.
We know that's not true.
Run away fast. No, I think my advice to myself would be keep everything. Keep everything. And I've done that pretty much, but there's things I wish I'd kept. Keep a journal. Keep a calendar. Keep everything so that you remember, what you did. I think for me, I think it would be watch what you say. Don't be as uncensored. You've seen me, over the course since 2009, where I've toned down, and I'm still kind of, but so if you follow me now, you think it's bad. You go back to 2009. I just said whatever because I didn't, I did not realize that I would no longer be anonymous. And I think that is something that you need to, if you're going into politics, the two specific things. One, get a Google Voice number and use that. Never give anybody your personal cell phone number. Because when you do want to disengage and need to disengage, you can't. So that's one. And use that Google Voice number. And separate your political emails from your personal emails. And there's a reason for that, too, so that you don't accidentally send something personal to your political side when you hit all contacts. You just be very mindful of keeping your private life somewhat where, and I don't mean that you're hiding yourself, but that you have a retreat to go to when you have a bad day, that you can shut it off. And that's something I didn't do, is that, I think everybody in the world has my cell phone number. If you can't find my cell phone number, you're not looking real hard. And I think that's one mistake that I made, was not having some privacy and putting that boundary up. And then two, preparing my family. I had no idea how this would impact my son. And that's one of the things I regret, is not preparing him, because I didn't know. Not preparing him of the really ugly things that people were going to say to me online and in person in front of him. And that, he doesn't have to come to my defense, and it's okay, and, people are just rude that way. But you have to prepare your family and yourself that you're no longer anonymous. You're down at Grist cutting up, restaurant cutting up with your friends, and you tell an off-color joke and somebody hears it. Next thing you know, it's in the paper. Oh, that did not happen to me. But I'm just saying, you have to watch what you say if you become a semi-public person. When you're doing activism or helping on a campaign, you really got to watch yourself.
Man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate coming on today, Toby. Where can people find you online? I mean, you've already told them they can find your cell phone number wherever they look. What are the best places, Twitter, etc.? If somebody wants to get more advice from you or hit you up for some thoughts, where can they find you online?
You can follow. This is my preferred method, is actually following me on Twitter, and then of course you can find me on Facebook. But I have it kind of shut down. I'm moving towards a more private life, but you can follow me on Twitter at Toby Marie. That's my favorite way for people to get a hold of me. I don't hide. You gave me this advice in 2009. Don't hide who you are. So, if you Googled me at my name, you're going to find my phone number and everything else, and you can call me. But please try to keep it between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., and there are time zones, people. I'm in Central. So if you're in Hawaii and it's midnight, don't call me. My last bit of it, get Campaign Coach. I didn't have it. I did not have this great service. I wish that you had been doing this since 2009, and think of all the money you'd have made off me.
Well, I sure appreciate it. We're working really hard to try to make sure that everybody that comes through our programs, whether you're listening to the podcast or reading the blog, we want you guys to win. We want to make it cheaper and easier, and we want you guys to be better prepared. And Toby, I want to have to have you on some more in the future, because we've got a long interview here, and we're going to need we still got more ground we could cover if we kept talking. So we'll have you on again in the future whenever I can break into your busy schedule. But for all you guys listening, make sure to check out the show notes for Toby's contact information and some of the links that we referenced during the show. And we'll talk to y'all again next week.
Please subscribe and rate us on iTunes to help spread the word. We'll be back with you next week with more campaign insights from My Campaign Coach.